This is a short tutorial on how to use the gridding method to transfer an image from one place to another place. So in this case, we're copying our photo at the same size onto this piece of paper. It can also be used to change the size of something, in which case you would have you would change the size of the grid. So if you wanted to do a mural of this, you might have 1 inch gridding here and then have a wall where the grids were a foot by a foot. All right, so for this example though, you can see how this is started. We're going to start from the beginning. So we have our image again, and we have the piece of paper that we're going to transfer it onto. The paper that I'm using, I printed out from a website, and it has the words www.printablepaper.net right here. This is really important to pay attention to where you're orienting that on your paper. So I've got my paper oriented all the way to this bottom left corner, which makes the words right here, and they are readable, they're not reversed. So when I put my grid on my image, I want to make sure that the words are in the same place, they're not reversed, so that we will have everything matching up. Because as you see, these grids are not perfectly even on all sides. So if you have your grid oriented differently, it would mess up the whole procedure. All right, so pay attention to where those words are and how they're oriented and which corner you have this aligned with. Okay, I'm going back in and making a slight edit to this video that I think makes this even a little bit easier. So I am putting my paper I should say my transparency, so the transparent grid, kind of in the middle of this 9 by 12 paper. And before I do anything else, I'm simply going to trace the outer edges. So we want to do this carefully. I made a little mistake there. I went back and corrected it. All right, so now I've got a rectangle, and that's going to represent the whole piece of paper that I'm going to be using as my photo. So this is the image that I'm gridding. This is this entire piece of paper, including the white area. Okay, so that's what that rectangle now represents. All right, now we do want to make sure that we have this aligned in a particular way. So those words, we want to notice where they are. Now we're going to make marks right below each of the lines on our gridded transparency. So I start on the transparency as if I'm drawing straight down, and then I continue actually drawing onto the paper. So we're going to do this at the bottom, we're going to do this at the top, and then we're going to connect them. So again, I'm starting right on top of the transparency, and as if I am drawing all the way up. Your pencil won't actually draw on the transparency, but that'll make sure that you are then making your mark right above where the mark is in the grid. We're going to connect these. All right. I'm going to then do the same thing on the right and the left sides of my piece of paper. And we want to make sure that as we're copying this grid, we do it exactly. So on this one in particular, this grid printed out a little bit crooked. It doesn't matter as long as when I draw my grid, I draw it the exact same way. And so by doing this the way we're doing this, we should get that result. All right, now I'm going to remove this. And I'm going to connect these lines using a ruler. And you want to do this really precisely. The biggest mistake that I have seen people make when doing gridding projects is they simply don't draw their grid accurately. And that means accurately to the grid that they're going to be using on the image. So any mistakes that you make sure you go back and fix them. All right, I'll do the rest of these connecting lines off camera. Okay, so I've just connected the top and bottom marks. Before I move on, I'm going to check them by placing my transparency over top. It should fit, again, right inside that rectangle you drew, and the pencil lines that I drew are exactly covered up. They're right underneath these lines of the transparency. And again, you do need to make sure that the words are in the right place, oriented the right way. So I already did my marks going the other direction. Again, I'm just going to cover them now. So same idea, just connect them, be as accurate as you possibly can be. Okay, I'll continue off camera. All right, so now I've completed my grid. So what is inside that rectangle should match exactly my transparency. When I line it up correctly, making sure that I'm inside that rectangle I drew and the words are in the right place. So if your grid lines are exactly where they should be, then you're ready to move on. If they're a little bit off, then you would go back and correct that before you move on. Next thing that we are going to do is we're going to number and letter the rows and the columns. So starting at my top row, which is just like a half a row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Finished off with 10. I numbered over here. Then I'm going to do letters along the top. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L. And then I'm going to number and letter the same way on my photograph. So it doesn't really matter if you reversed it and you did the numbers on the top and the letters down the side, as long as what you do on your gridded paper matches how it looks on the photo. Now there's going to be a jump in the video. This is a re-recording, so as it continues, you're going to see that my grid is in the corner instead of where I've placed it. And I'm going to match the lettering and numbering on here. So I do have to remove this and kind of guess a little bit and get these in the right spot. So that's why I want to do them right in the middle. So A, B, C, etc. All right, so when I put this back down, I've got my letters centered enough so that they're in the right corresponding parts. just slide this over a little bit to do the numbering. All right, so I'm going to number even this little one at the top because it's what I did on my paper. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, including that little tiny one down at the bottom. Okay, so now we're basically copying whatever is in each of these squares onto the matching square. Okay, back to the re-recording, so you're going to find that my rectangle is in the middle again. I have done the lettering and numbering so that it's easy to match up my squares. And I do want to mention here that as you place the grid now onto your photo, make sure, again, that you've lined it up the same way that you lined it up on your paper, meaning that where it says www.printablepaper.net, make sure that that is in the same place and oriented the same way as it was when you did your gridding over here. So I can tell really quickly that this matches this. This 9A matches 9A, etc. So we're going to draw whatever is in each square, one at a time, basically. And that is going to start with this white border all around my photo. So remember, this rectangle that I've drawn, that represents the outside of the photo. That's like the whole piece of paper. We're going to start by drawing that white border, because if we don't, it's going to mess with your mind. So I'm just looking to see, okay, where is that line? Where does it line up in this little rectangle? Is it halfway across? No, it's not halfway across what's there. So I'm going to put that about where I think it goes. And same thing with this rectangle down at the bottom. I'm going to see, okay, that little sliver of the gray, that should be right here. And then I'm just going to continue that. So looking at that on the other side, again, I'm going to see, okay, this little part here, 1110, matches 1110, and I'm going to make sure that I put this in the right place. Oops, sorry. So I could even line that up right here and just see, oh, okay, that's exactly where that's going to be. And then same thing here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to draw in the rest of that line. I could go rectangle by rectangle, but I don't really need to because all I'm doing is drawing this white border at the bottom. And I'm going to continue. I'm going to draw the white border all the way around the edge. So again, when I get to the top, I want to make sure, okay, am I making sure to put that white border exactly where it belongs? I could even line up the top of my photo with where that transparency line was, make sure that's in the exact right place. And continue across. So I have just that white border now. I'm going to go back to my original recording. So again, you're going to see this whole thing kind of shift into this corner as I explain how I'm adding my drawing in here. But other than that, everything will be the same. We've got this kind of white border all the way around our photo. All right, and from there, we're just going to kind of continue that process. So down here at the very bottom, again, I'm going to make sure that I line this up. All right, and you want it lined up really exactly. We want to pay attention to even the smallest little details. I'm going to see, okay, this is 10, and then this is going to be B9, basically, is where I start to see a line happening in my image. So I'm going to look, where does that connect? Okay, it's going to be right in the corner, and I'm going to look at that angle. You can even do things as small as, oh, okay, there's like a little bump there in the line, so I'm copying that edge. And again, you want to think about, okay, where does that line cross this part of the grid? Oh, it's just a little bit to the side of half. So as you're trying to figure that kind of thing out, I'm often mentally and sometimes even physically kind of dividing up squares into smaller like quarters to figure out where are these lines going to fall. Then I'm moving up to this square up here and I'm looking, okay, I'm going to copy this line. It kind of does roughly this, and then I can go back and I can say, oh, okay, but there's actually like a little bump and then another little bump. So the more you try to get that detail, the more accurate your drawing is going to be. But feel free, you can kind of like first look at that overall angle and then kind of add in the smaller details from there, kind of like what we did when we did our underdrawing first. And then from there, so I've got this outside, but I've also got this lighter line here. That's just going to be a fold in the cloth. And I can also kind of look and try to understand what's happening with the shapes and forms. So this is kind of a seam in the cloth that's bumping out. So that can also help make your drawing more accurate. So gridding, just like when we were doing tracing earlier, yeah, theoretically anyone can trace, but the more you know about form and interior line, the better your tracing of your photograph actually is going to be. So the same thing goes here too. So I'm going to see, oh, there's another tiny little line there, that edge of the seam. And I'm going to copy that in as well. So again, and then this like next little square, I can see, oh, this actually cuts through that little tiny corner. So I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to see, oh, okay, and then I've got this kind of curve or angle. And where does that end? It's a little bit down from the center, so I can kind of roughly copy that, and then I can add in any more sort of like precise details or variations. I can also see, oh, okay, there's like a line there going over it that's like a piece of my hair, and then this other part like above it. So I'm already looking to see those details. I can even put in these like little tiny holes in the lace if I want to. So that may be a little bit too much, but if you want to, you can, because just going square by square, it does allow for that realism. Notice I'm drawing really lightly, so I'm still going to make mistakes even with the gridding. So I still want to make sure that I draw lightly so I can go back and make changes. So that's basically the idea. The first go around, what I'll usually do is just do kind of the outlines. So if you see a shape like this kind of has like a bit of a soft edge there. It's a shadow, but I would just sort of roughly go around what I think the shape is. If I see a shadow, I could even kind of like outline both sides of the shadow a little bit. And then after I do kind of my outlines of everything, then I'm going to erase the grids and start to add the shading. And you guys are going to be allowed to use different materials depending on what you want to do.